Hello. Good evening, everybody. We are just a few minutes away from the commencement of the Lucknow Inter-Martiniere debate that is held annually. And since we are conducting this in a virtual format, and since we have judges from different parts of the country here with us this evening, I would first like to address the judges even before I formally welcome them and introduce them to members of the House as well as the teams. I would like to address the judges regarding the system of marking so that we are comfortable and will also enjoy listening to the arguments that are presented by the two teams. I understand that our technical department has already got in touch with each of the judges and have done a run through with you for live judging and filling in of marks in the appropriate columns. There is also an explanation which has been given for the mark distribution, and as we begin the formal ceremonies of this debate, this will be announced once again. Just a word of advice to our judges. It would be most appropriate if editing of marks is completed before the fourth speaker of each team presents arguments. As you may not be completely familiar with the format, let me put that in another way. There will be 3 speakers from each side. Alternately, there will be a summing up by the opposition, a summing up by the proposition. Thereafter, the fourth speaker of each team will be given 2 minutes to present arguments. It is at that time that results should be completed and sent as per the link provided to you so that they can be collated and tabulated under the supervision of the vice principal of our college. This is about the only little detail which I would like you to focus on. In the meantime, I know that there are just 1, 2, 3 of us who are of a certain age. I refer to myself, I refer to my dear friend Mrs. Maureen Ocha, and I refer to my new friend Mrs. The name, you see, I don't live in Bengal, so I've got to really practice these vowels very well, okay? Suchispita Raha, all right? We all are of a certain age. Now, boys and girls, don't ask us what that cutoff point is. So if we are going to make a few mistakes here and there, don't worry. Be absolutely certain that the children's interests will be carefully looked after and that you will not, in inverted commas, suffer in any way because of us doddering elderly people who have decided to be part of this debate as well. Let's begin. And may I begin by very formally welcoming you to the annual Lucknow Inter-Martiniere debate, which is generally held in the first week of August. But in the first week of August, we were too busy covering our noses and our mouths. So there was no way in which we would even speak to each other. We were most afraid that even if we talked to each other virtually in a format such as this, who knows, we might pick up COVID-19. Of course, you are still advised to be most careful, and that is why there is the appropriate social distancing which has been done. The Inter-Martiniere debate, the Lucknow Inter-Martiniere debate, is generally held prior to the Lucknow versus Calcutta Martiniere debates as a kind of run up to that very special event. Well, we are having the debate this evening in Lucknow, and I do hope that if the principals of the schools in Kolkata are watching this, they too will be motivated, inspired, bullied a little by their respective pupils to also come and meet us on this virtual platform for an opportunity for our young people. So, very welcome, a great welcome to everyone, and a very warm welcome to three people who will be listening to every word of the debate this evening. I have instructed my friends in this studio that when you see my eyes closing, please turn off the camera. But the judges do not have this privilege. They will listen to every word that you say, and they will be the only three in the whole world. Even if your parents are listening, boys and girls, they will find tea more interesting, all right? They will be listening to every word that is said. And so I welcome them to this program. Up on screen at the moment, you see that very glittering trophy. It is called the Martin Memorial Trophy. And just in case we get it wrong, and just in case tradition is not fully maintained, let me remind you that this is not in honor of Claude Martin, as most things in this college are. This is a cup, it is a trophy, which was instituted for the annual Lucknow Inter-Martiniere debate in 1999. It was instituted by the erstwhile principal, my predecessor, Mr. Elton D'Souza, and his sister, Mrs. Irene Gurich. It was instituted in honor of their parents, Mr. and Mrs. Jen Martin. They are, as I said, the parents of the donor. The cup itself is on a wooden stand. It is 18 inches tall. It is 8 inches wide. And the legend on the trophy says, the Martin Memorial Trophy, La Martiniere Inter-School Debate. It is a running trophy. As already shared with you, Mr. and Mrs. Martin were parents of Mr. Elton D'Souza, who was the principal of the college for 21 years. He and his sister were both students of La Martiniere colleges in Lucknow. The first recipient of this trophy was La Martiniere Girls College, and we have over there the roll of honor for the number of times the two colleges have won this trophy. I'm sure you will be able to get a recording of this to be able to count up exactly who won what and in which particular year. Every year, along with the Martin Memorial Trophy, Mr. Elton D'Souza very kindly provides gift coupons to be encashed at a local bookseller for the winning team, for the runner-up team, that is each member of the team, and for the best speaker. This has already reached us and will be sent to the respective teams by tomorrow itself. Let me now introduce the judges to each one of our pupils who are over here, as well as the wider house. Our first judge is Mrs. Maureen Ojha, and she joins us from Bangalore. As I said, we are both of a certain age. She was quite terrified to come onto a virtual platform. Will I do it right? Will I not do it right? But she's already doing it right. And what's more, she's even smiling through the whole thing. Mrs. Ojha was until recently the principal of Tunbridge High School in Bangalore. It is a post in which she served for 22 years In recognition of the outstanding contribution that she has made in the city of Bangalore and to Anglo-Indian education in general, she was conferred the prestigious De Rosier Award in the year 2015 by the CISCE, that is the council that runs our public examinations. She continues, of course, to guide Tunbridge School in the post of role of manager and correspondent as well. Welcome, Mrs. Ocha, and let's have a look at Mrs. Ocha in all her glory. And there she is, okay? Good evening, Mrs. Ocha. You would have to turn on your mic. There is a little button over there that says mute, unmute, okay? We just want to hear your voice and hear you say hello.
Hello, everybody. This is really fascinating to have an online debate, and I wish every one of you all the very best. Thank you for welcoming me as a judge.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you for accepting our invitation. Okay, I'd like to move our camera. Oh, the camera is back on me. Isn't that nice? Okay. Our second judge, all right, is the lady with all those lovely Bengali vowels in her name. Okay, Mrs. Sushmita Raha. Okay, I hope I've got it right because I would hate to get it wrong. Okay, she is the senior teacher of English in the city of Kolkata. She has been teaching for 40 years, so you can well imagine why I put her in the same class as I am in. Okay, most of her teaching has been done in the iconic St. Thomas's Girls' College in Kolkata, which is one of the oldest schools in the country, not just in the city of Kolkata. She has written a series of books, edited, all related to her subject, which is English, and at school level as well. There are many other things that she has done. Okay, at the moment, she is also the academic advisor to the Vivekanand Mission School in Kolkata. She has been a teacher and a trainer for 30 years plus, okay, in the B.Ed department of St. Xavier's College in Kolkata, among so many other things. But what I'm delighted about is that she has agreed to join us. And I think it is primarily because this is a debate which involves young people. And from what I have seen through this little bit of write-up which comes up on the internet and so on, which never does justice to what a person really is, the involvement with young people seems to be a very strong component in everything that this lady does. May I request my technical team to, and there she is, all right? There she is, okay? The light is correct, the glasses are correct, okay? The lipstick is just right, all right? And welcome, ma'am, okay?
Thank you so much. A very good evening to all of you, and thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to a delightful evening. All the best to all the speakers.
Thank you so much. Okay. We move now to our third judge. And this is not a pretty girl, but here is a smart man, right? And smart man, I've had the pleasure to know when he was much younger than he is today. I refer to the Reverend Cecil Norman Peters, who is the director of the Grace College in Jamshedpur, right? So our first judge, as I said, is from Bangalore. Our second judge, Kolkata, and Cecil is from Jamshedpur. He has been director of this college from the year 2002. The college itself is much older. It was established in 1981, and it offers diploma and undergraduate degree courses in theology and Christian studies. Some of you might remember that this was the very gifted, talented, and it seemed inspired speaker who spoke to our boys during the chapel service to commemorate our founder on the 13th of September 2 years ago. He made an instant connect with the boys and the girls who were present over there. And it is a great delight, Cecil, to have you back with us, even though virtually. May I also share a secret? I prefer that it is virtual because if you were here in person, you would be pulling my leg. So here we go, over to Cecil in Jamshedpur. Okay?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. A very good evening to everyone, and I look forward to having a very nice time of listening to the debate. Thank you, and all the best to all the participants. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Um, the timekeepers for this evening's program are two persons representing the Girls' College and the Boys' College. Okay, Mrs. Bhavna Kalra joins us to keep a watch on the time, and Mr. Harpreet Singh is here with me in the studio, who will be the primary timekeeper for this evening. Mr. Harpreet will be watching time carefully, and in case there is any doubt about time, only then will Mrs. Kalra step in to make an objection if it is necessary. It might not be, but we keep the provision all the same. And before we move on to introducing to you the two teams, let me introduce you to two very pretty ladies, okay, who come from the Girls and the Boys College, right? I kept the best for the last, okay? And these are our debating secretaries, Mrs. Sudarshana Dasgupta and Mrs. Sangeeta Dhar, okay? Mrs. Dasgupta has for many years been training the girls of Martiniere Girls College for debating. Watching the way the girls debate, I don't think very much training is really required. Most of it comes pretty naturally to them, right? Mrs. Sangeeta Dhal, however, has to encourage our boys to be pretty fierce at most of the time. You see what to do. The boys are so polite. Okay, so therefore they have to be trained to do these things. But Sudarshana and Sangeeta are both watching this virtually, and I'm sure that they will be very proud of their proteges this evening as they present their arguments. Moving on, okay, the rules for the debate are as follows. Each team which is here shall comprise of one principal speaker and two supporting speakers. The two principal speakers shall be allowed 5 minutes each to put forward their arguments. A warning bell will ring 1 minute before the time is up. The final bell shall be rung when the time is up. In all cases, the bell shall be rung by the timekeeper representing the host school, as I explained a little while ago, with the opportunity for the other timekeeper to interject if required. The two other speakers from each side will be given 4 minutes each to speak. They will, however, take no part in the summing up. They may only help the main speaker by giving that speaker points to be used in the summing up. A warning bell shall ring 1 minute before the time is up for each speaker, and the final bell shall be rung when the time is up. After all the speakers have presented their arguments, the principal speaker of each team shall be given 4 minutes to sum up the arguments of the team. The principal speaker of the opposition shall sum up first. At the end of each speech, except the summing up speeches, a period of 2 minutes shall be allotted to each speaker for rebuttal. That is, to answer questions by members of the opposing team. And of course, here I have to be a little schoolmasterish about this. The questions must be confined to the substance of the speech that immediately precede each rebuttal process. A maximum of 2 questions may be asked for each rebuttal. The 2 questions may be asked by the same speaker, or the same interjector, or different interjectors. Cross-questioning shall not be permitted, and only the time taken to answer the questions shall be taken into account. The questions themselves shall not be included in the 2 minutes allotted for the rebuttal. Here, let me also advise the speakers to ensure that you ask questions and don't come and give a long litany of opinions. Okay, we require a question on the content that the speaker has put forward. Although marks shall not be provided for the questions asked by the opposing speakers, the quality of the questions posed shall be taken into account when assessing the overall impression of the team. The fourth speaker of each team, who is an integral part of the team and generally is our junior member of the team, training to be part of the main the speakers for the main arguments to be presented, will then put forward additional arguments upon the conclusion of the overall summing up. This shall be for 2 minutes each. Speakers shall be permitted the use of flashcards. They may refer to notes. However, continuous reading shall be penalized. And as I said before, everyone, including the judges, must be aware that the marks which are allotted are along these lines. For content, 20 points. For delivery, 5 points. For argument, 5 points. For the summing up, that is of the entire team and not for individual speakers, 10 points. General impression, once again, not for individual speakers, but for the entire team, 10 points. In case there are any questions which the judges might like to ask, I would like my technical team to please bring them on to screen where I may request them to raise a hand in case any clarification is required at this time. Generally, we have a brief judges meeting prior to any one of these debates, and I would like our boys and girls to understand that this is a serious business and that there is no equivocal kind of opinion. Everyone is clear about what we are pursuing at this time. So I can see my judges on screen. None of them have raised a hand, which indicates that they are clear about the process. And with that, we move into the next element of these introductory remarks. It is my delight to introduce to you the team proposing the motion. The motion, as already announced, is: nature has made us unequal, so right or the right to equality is a farce. Nature has made us unequal, so right or the right to equality is a farce. This is, in fact, the opinion of the House, and proposing the motion, nature has made us unequal, so right to equality is a farce, is Martiniere College, Lucknow, represented by the principal speaker, Akul Kumar. I would like Akul to be spotlighted at this time. Okay. Welcome, Akul. As principal speaker leading the team from Martiniere College, Lucknow, you do have a great responsibility, but remember, you are speaking to friends as well, and so I wish you all the very best. Supporting Akul is our second speaker, Aditya Vohra. Aditya is welcome to the program. What a delight to see boys dressed in uniform and looking nice and smart and healthy. Welcome, Aditya, to the debate. Our third speaker is Arnav Agarwal. Arnav Agarwal is up on screen. Okay, he does a little wave over there. I wish I could wave back. Welcome, Arnav, and all the very best to you. And our fourth speaker is a boy who has taken so much of responsibility in the last few weeks in school, Abhiram Krishnan Shukla, who will be summing up and giving concluding arguments once the debate, once the judging of the debate is over. Welcome, Abhiram. Opposing the motion, nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce, is La Martiniere Girls' College, where the principal speaker is Ananya Agarwal. Ananya will be spotlighted just now. Ananya has already been introduced to some of us in the college a few hours ago when she made the selection on behalf of her team of the topic. And this topic, which has been proposed by a principal of a school in Lucknow, was zeroed in upon by Ananya herself. Ananya is supported by Devangi Dubey, who is the second speaker from La Martiniere Girls' College. When I introduced Devangi a few hours ago, I said how impressed I was by the spectacles, by the earphones, by the books in the background, and let me say that I still continue to remain impressed. Welcome, young lady. The third speaker is Pavni Devan, right? And Pavni joins us virtually, also looking ever so smart in her school tunic. Must be a great pleasure to wear your school uniform. I don't know after how long you are wearing your school uniform, and so long as it fits, there are no complaints, okay? Our fourth speaker is Ashika Manu, and Ashika also is looking a wee bit nervous, and I don't know why, because you are among friends, and I do hope that you will enjoy the debate and present your arguments at the appropriate time. Just to remind you once again of the topic. In the opinion of the House, nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce. Proposing the motion, I call upon the first speaker, the principal speaker for the proposition representing La Martiniere College, Lucknow, Akul Kumar, to present his arguments. Akul.
Am I audible, sir?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. A very good evening to the members of the House, the respected judges, and my most worthy opponents. The topic for today's debate is Nature has made us unequal, so right to equality is a farce, and I stand here firmly proposing the motion. Before I present the arguments of side proposition, allow me to define the key words of today's topic. The first being natural inequality. Natural inequality stems from differences in ages, health, or other physical characteristics. Differences. The right to equality provides for the equal treatment of everyone before the law, prevents discrimination on various grounds, treats everybody as equals in matters of public employment, and abolishes untouchability and titles such as Sir, Rai Bahadur, etc. It is a blanket treatment for all. Farce. Farce means ridiculous. It's a ridiculous situation or event, something that is considered a waste of time, something that is disorganized or not enough. The fact that we do have something such as right to equality immediately validates the first portion of the topic under discussion today. That is, nature has made us unequal. There is inequality that needs to be equalized. Now, on the validity of the right to equality. Is that adequate? Is it relevant? And is it appropriate? So the burden of proof of side proposition today is to prove to you that A, people are naturally unequal, and B, the right to equality, this blanket equality for all, while it seems wonderful in theory, it in actuality is not adequate, it is not enough, and is simply a farce. The burden of proof for side opposition today is to prove to you how right to equality can be provided to all and how the right to equality is absolute and will always be guaranteed to a person throughout their life. My second speaker will talk about the difference between equality and equity and prove how natural inequality leads to social inequality. Thus, the premise of right to equality is flawed. My third speaker, while progressing the case of side proposition, will deconstruct the arguments presented by side opposition. Now, moving on to my constructive. Humans are biologically very diverse, and thus we are not individually equivalent in any sense. We are not equivalent in the sense of specific traits and abilities, that is, height, face shape, muscle density, running, calculating, singing, speaking, etc. No two humans are biologically the same. In reality, people are not born equal. We talk about equality as if it's a fact. It's not. Equality is a lie. Each individual is different. No one is the same in each and every aspect. As long as society is human in nature, it cannot be equal. Regardless of whether groups of people are biologically equal, it is certainly true that as individuals we are not. Our genes differentiate us. What all this means is that there is no single quality that we all share that makes us equal. Not through nature or nurture, not intelligence, not strength, nothing. Equality still eludes millions of tribals and the poorest of the poor. Our push for digital India with Aadhaar as its trumpet call is further disadvantaging these sections and denying them the access to public welfare services such as pensions and food rations. Talk of equality is a farce when 200 billion people go to bed hungry. Differently abled people should have special rights since nature has endowed them with less equality of opportunity for all citizens in matter relating to employment, as is said by the right to equality. So, for differently abled people, certain exceptions are made. All that is very fair and just and required. But do you realize in all this, the equality factor has gone away? It just cannot exist. The inequality, the natural inequality has to be considered. You make laws to cater to the exceptions, or what we can say are the natural inequalities. And the moment you do that, that makes separate laws. You are covertly accepting that the right to equality on its own is actually not adequate and it's not enough. The philosopher Peter Singer said, "The principle of equality is not a description of an alleged actual equality among humans. It is a prescription of how we should treat human beings. Equality is when we extend not to groups of people, but to individuals. It has to be as per individual needs, and hence the blanket one-size-fits-all right to equality is a farce. What kind of equality, if any, should be offered, and to whom and when?" With this, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was Akul, the principal speaker on behalf of the proposition, presenting his arguments. He did go above time by 30 seconds, okay? So, of course, judges have already been advised not to consider any argument which is presented after the final bell has been rung. We're going to have to do a little bit of mix and match over here. And I'm going to request my technical team to bring us all back onto the screen so that we can have this feature of rebuttal at this time. Just to remind you, Akul is ready to field questions from the opposing team. The opposing team, the member who would like to ask a question, may raise a hand at this time and we will spotlight the speaker. Yes, that is Pavni Devan who wishes to ask a question.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are.
Sir, in your speech, you mentioned that persons with disabilities should have rights because they are born different. Rights by the government, like for example in government services there are provisions and reservations for persons with disabilities. So what would you like to say about that?
I'm sorry.
As we move the focus to Akul readies himself to reply. Yes, Akul.
I'm sorry, ma'am, could you please repeat the question? There was a connectivity issue.
No
Because
problem.
of the limitations of technology, we will hear the question once again. back to Pavani, please.
Right. Sir, thank you for the speech. In your speech, you mentioned that persons with disabilities have rights. However, do you realize that there are rights existing for persons with disabilities given by the government? Like, for example, in government services, there are provisions and reservations for persons with disabilities. Your response?
We spotlight Akul at this time. Yes, Akul.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. Ma'am, that is exactly what we're saying. When right to equality, under right to equality, you are discriminating among people. You are giving people different reservations. You're giving them different. The right to equality is not a blanket thing. It's being different for others. You are actually presenting equity rather than equality. So your right to equality becomes a farce. I hope that answers the question, ma'am.
We move to another question which could be asked. And yes, there is a hand up over there. Miss Manu will now ask this question.
Thank you, sir, for your speech. For the benefit of the House, could you please explain what the proposition means by differences and unequal? Because throughout your speech, you showed that there is a difference between them, but you then mix them somehow. Could you please clarify?
Okay, question going to Akul. Akul gives his response at this time.
Thank you for your question, ma'am. Ma'am, as was explained by me in the beginning of my speech, natural inequalities, when we're talking about natural inequalities, we are talking about differences in age, health, or other physical characteristics. The differences among people and how people are different, and how the right to equality doesn't cater to all of them. I hope that answers the question, ma'am.
Thank you, Akul, and thank you for the two questions, because that has set the tone for the rest of the debate as well. It is my privilege to invite the principal speaker of the opposition, Ananya Agarwal, to now present arguments on behalf of the team from La Martiniere Girls College.
May I begin, sir?
Yes, you.
October 9th, 2012, rural Pakistan. A 14-year-old girl was returning from school. Just like the boys of the valley, she had decided to sit in a classroom that day. Just like the boys, she had dreams in her eyes and hope in her heart. But that day, she was shot by the Taliban. Malala Yousafzai was shot because she refused to submit to an unequal world. She was shot because she held on so dearly to her right to equality. The gunshot couldn't do much. And that day, along with her, another thing emerged unscathed: the right to equality in an unequal world. Good evening, members of the House. The topic under fire today reads, Nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce, and I, Ananya Agarwal, as lead speaker of side opposition, stand strongly against the motion. Members of the House, the example that I just gave gives the essence of the argument of side opposition today. Nowhere do we state or try to state that we live in an equal world today. Yes, nature has made us unequal. Yes, there are inequalities that the world is struggling with. But, members of the House, right to equality is a principle, an ideal which we as the civilized society hope to achieve and are fighting for. To elaborate, let us look at the definitions again. Right to equality is the right of different groups of people to have a similar social position and receive the same treatment. A farce, ladies and gentlemen, is defined as a ridiculous situation or event, or something that is considered a waste of time. So when my worthy opponents today state that the right to equality is a farce, do they mean to say that the ideal situation where everyone gets equal treatment is a ridiculous one? This brings me to another key point. Nature is all-powerful. When nature makes us unequal, very often human beings are unable to make biological fixes. However, as human beings, what we can do is give everyone equal treatment and equal social position, which is precisely the definition of right to equality. Quote, I have a very happy life, unquote. Members of the House, these were the words of Sam Burns in his last TED Talk. A 17-year-old suffering from progeria, a genetic disease which leads to premature aging and early death. He died soon after, aged 70. Medical science could do nothing to stop his early death, and yet he lived a happy life. Yet we endeavored to give him a status of equality in the society. We as a society moved forward in our fight for equality, ladies and gentlemen. My third speaker will delve deeper into this argument. Members of the House, at this point, I would like to refer to another debate, the debates of our Constituent Assembly. Our founding fathers debated on this issue for hours and months at length, and at the end of the debates, our Constitution embodied the principle of right to equality. My second speaker will further delve into the technicalities of the right to equality. Ladies and gentlemen, under the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2030, the nations have pledged, and I quote, to leave no one behind. Members of the House, the world leaders believe in the right to equality and hope to achieve it one day. Would my worthy opponents come here and tell us that everything that they are working towards is a farce? Would they come here and tell us that the principle that UN SDGs stand for is a farce? Before I conclude my speech, I would like to address one last serious accusation that may be pinned on the opposition, that of idealism. Ladies and gentlemen, idealism proves to be dangerous only when it is unfounded. And the numerous arguments and facts that I have provided amply prove that the ideal of equality is certainly not unwanted. Members of the House, mankind sets ideals so that they may be achieved. Had the right to equality been a farce, had the principle of achievement of seemingly impossible ideals been bound to never be a reality, a certain Martin Luther would have never harbored a dream of freedom in a country which is right now welcoming its first female black vice president. A certain Mahatma would have never set off on foot for Dandi. A certain Malala would have never dared to go to school, and these impossible ideals would have never been a reality. With this, I rest my case.
Thank you, Ananya. We will have questions, but before that, my timekeeper informs that she was absolutely on the dot. There are two hands raised. I recognize Arnav Agarwal at this time. Your question.
Thank you, Chairperson, sir, for the recognition. Ma'am, thank you for your speech. My question to you is, in your speech, you very conveniently quoted the right to equality and how it was formed as a result of deliberation. In the very constitution of our country, it is mentioned that reservation, which comes under the right to equality, is a limitation. So do you think that when a right to equality is limited, how can it be valid? Please justify.
Thank you, Sir Speaker, for your question. With the permission of the chairperson. Sir Speaker, you talked about the reservation system of our country. Sir Speaker, thank you so much for bringing up this point because it in fact supports our side. Sir Speaker, what I have been trying to say through the course of my speech is that currently inequality does exist in the world, and that is the reason why the right to equality also exists. Why the ideal of equality exists, because people need to achieve it. Now, if they are downtrodden in the country, the government tries to ensure that they are provided with equal opportunities to achieve. The government tries to ensure that they get the same status, which is the principle of equality. So that proves our point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. Aditya Vora raised his hand earlier, and Aditya has the permission to ask his question.
Thank you, ma'am, for your speech. Ma'am, you do understand that this debate isn't about whether right to equality is right or wrong. It is about whether the right to equality is a ridiculous lie. In your first example, you said when a girl went to school, she was shot. Thus, doesn't that prove that the right to equality is a ridiculous lie that can never be implemented in this world? Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Speaker, for your question. With the permission of the chairperson. Sir Speaker, I talked about Malala Yousafzai, the youngest Nobel laureate in history. Sir Speaker, that girl tried to achieve education, which she believed was as much the right of girls as it was of boys. Today, she's a graduate of the University of Oxford. So I think that answers your question. Right to equality is an achievable ideal that people are fighting for. Human beings as a species are evolving. We are evolving how we treat people in the society. And that is what the right for equality stands for. Thank you, sir. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Ananya. And that brings us to the end of the speeches by the principal speakers on both sides. Both have been able to put forward before the House the stance that each side is taking at this time. And now, to add to what side proposition is upholding, we have Aditya Vora, who will now be presenting his arguments.
Sir, I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. The topic under fire for today's debate states, nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce. And I stand here firmly proposing the motion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let us just understand what the principal speaker of side opposition said and how they've already lost the debate. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, we are not talking about the fact that whether right to equality is right or wrong. We are talking about the fact how right to equality is a ridiculous lie. In the very first example, they said that when a girl went to school, she was shot. Because, ladies and gentlemen, understand the society do not consider girls to be consider girls to go and educate themselves. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that is why right to equality is a ridiculous lie that cannot be implemented in this world. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they talked about reservations. Let me give you a scenario for this. Let me just create an image for you all. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that there are two people. There are two people who want to watch a cricket match. One of them is tall, one of them is short. But there is a fence which is preventing them to watch that cricket match. What do we do as a society, ladies and gentlemen? We provide them with two boxes. The tall person is able to watch the match, but the short person is still unable to do so. So what do we do? It's simple, right? Just provide him with another box, and now he can watch the match. But understand, ladies and gentlemen, that isn't equality. That is equity. Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, that they stated the Indian Constitution. But I hope that they have read the Indian Constitution. The Article 16, subsection 1 of the Indian Constitution said that subsection 1 of the Indian Constitution said that each and every person is equal under the courts of law, and each and every person will be given equal opportunities. The subsection 4 says that nothing withstanding in the subsection 1 will allow the state to give certain privileges to certain backward sections of the society. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that reservation is a limitation, or rather an exception of equality. It is not a benefit of equality, ladies and gentlemen. It is rather an exception or a limitation to equality. So let us just understand that what world they are talking about. They are talking about a world where a person with disability is equal to a person who has all the physical characteristics. Thus, understand, ladies and gentlemen, they are talking about the similar opportunities, similar rights should be given to that person who has a particular disability compared to a person who is physically fit. They are talking about this world. They do not understand that what the principle of right to equality is, and they have come here to debate. Ladies and gentlemen, let us understand that natural inequality leads to social inequality. Thus, the premise to ensure right to equality is inherently fallacious. Let us talk about the LGBT community, ladies and gentlemen. For the longest time, intercourse has been related to procreation. But now, ladies and gentlemen, there are individuals who are attracted to the same sex and that intercourse do not lead to procreation. Thus, the society deem them as unnatural. The society take away rights from them. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that even if there are discriminatory laws that are present to prevent discrimination against the LGBT community, we need to understand we are providing them with equity. We are providing them with reservation. They are talking about the world. They are talking about a world where there is no equity which is provided to these kind of people. Which brings me to my third argument, which is due to a natural inequality. Even if we try to ensure equal opportunities, that will lead to a paradox in the social structure. understand, ladies and gentlemen, that let us consider the example of jobs. If a person A goes to a particular interview, who comes from Bombay and has all the opportunities of life, and a person B who is coming from, for example, a village in Uttar Pradesh, even if we provide them with equal opportunities at that particular point, ladies and gentlemen, everything preceding to that interview was not equality. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will provide them with equity. We are in support of equity, but we are not in support of equality, ladies and gentlemen, which says that each and every person will be equal in the eyes of law. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I'm very, very proud to propose.
Thank you, Aditya. That was Aditya Vora, second speaker from Side Proposition. And I am informed that he overshot his time limit by 45 seconds. It is at this time that we will take questions in rebuttal. And from Side Proposition, there is a hand raised. Yes, Papi Devan is now permitted to ask her question.
Thank you for your question, sir. Sir, in your speech, you stated that Mala Yousafzai was shot because she was trying to achieve the right to equality. That is because a gender bias exists in society. But do you realize, sir, that society and gender bias itself, they are man-made constructs, they are man-made inequalities and not inequalities. How do you justify that?
Aditya Vora has the privilege to reply.
I'm very sorry, but the last part of the question was not clear because of some technical glitch. If you could repeat, that would be very kind.
No issues at all. What I said was that in your speech you mentioned that Malala Yousafzai was shot because she tried to achieve the right to equality. And she was shot because there exists a gender bias in the society that we live in. But however, do you realize that gender bias and society itself is a man-made construct? It's a man-made inequality. It's not a natural inequality. So how do you justify your stance?
Understand, ladies and gentlemen, when Malala was shot because she was approaching towards right to equality, my fellow speaker is saying here that this is a man-made concept, but we need to understand that this is part of the social structure. This is part of the society, and we cannot neglect this part. And that is why we are saying that right to equality, which is of course a good thing. We are accepting that fact that right to equality is important, but in the practical world, it is to think like that, it is utterly preposterous. It's not utterly preposterous. It's not possible. That's why we are saying it is a ridiculous lie. But we appreciate the concept, the principle of right to equality. We are not questioning the principle of right to equality, but we are saying that in the practical world, it is a ridiculous lie. And that's what our burden of proof is, and that's what our stance is. Thank you.
Thank you for your speech, sir. You said that it is nothing, the right to equality is nothing but a ridiculous lie. So, in your belief, it can never be achieved. And do you, as an individual, will you ever demand for right to equality because you're abolishing its very existence in the first place? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. Ma'am, in my belief, it can never be achieved. Let's take an example of the communist revolution that have happened in many states. For example, the Russian Federation, or for example, Venezuela. Wherever the communist revolution has happened, people have approached towards the right to equality, that each and every citizen is equal, but that has never been practically possible. So we have already seen examples that people are approaching towards right to equality, but that has never happened. And I do not support right to equality because I support equity, ladies and gentlemen, that if a certain person is disabled in a certain way, then that person should be given special privileges. And that is what I support. I do not support the right to equality, that each and every person should be given equal opportunities. And that was very clearly stated by my first example of the two men and the cricket stadium. Thank you. Sorry, sir, but you're actually inaudible.
We move to the second speaker of the opposition at this time, Devangi Dubey, who will present arguments on behalf of La Martiniere Girls College.
Am I audible?
Yes, you.
A very good evening, members of the House. The motion under fire today reads that nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce. And I, Devangi Dubey, as the second speaker of the opposition, will explain to you exactly what the right to equality stands for and how it already accounts for all the inequalities that are created by nature and tries to bridge them. Members of the House, today the proposition might try to incite you with their theatrics, the only thing that they are so famously known for. However, let us take a moment to remind ourselves that this is not an annual production, but a debate competition, which I would like to bring us back to by firstly pointing out a fundamental flaw in their so far absolutely hollow arguments. Members of the House, the proposition spoke about the Indian Constitution and very eloquently established a difference between equity and equality. However, at the very onset, they have failed to understand that right to equality in India, since we're talking about the Indian Constitution, stands for substantive equality and not formal equality or equality in a strict sense. It stands for substantial equality or equity in the first place. Therefore, the whole difference between equity and equality falls flat on its face. They have also failed to differentiate between natural inequalities and man-made inequalities by saying that because they arise out of social construct, this is also a natural inequality, and that argument too falls flat on its face. Moving on to my constructives. Now, someone rightly said that privilege is when you think that something is not a problem simply because it is not a problem to you. However, the fact remains that as long as you fit in the so-called heteronormative norms, you're a fine, respective citizen, and the moment you don't, you're a social pariah. And the biggest example that comes first to my mind is of people who belong to the often misinterpreted LGBTQIA community. Members of the House, 1 in 5 hate crimes, such as conversion therapy, sexual assault, sex trafficking, so on and so forth, are committed against this community. Their voice often goes unheard, and this assures confidence to abusers and instills a mentality in them that they can get away with anything and everything. Secondly, another thing that the right to equality stands for is equality before law, which means 2 things. Firstly, that the law is uniform for all. Secondly, is equal application of laws for everyone. At this point, I would again like to point out that as the opposition, we are not talking about absolute equality or equality among the unequals. Now let's look at the example of race. Since this is also a natural inequality, as it is something that we are born with. In the United States of America, a country fighting systemic, deep-rooted racism, a white police officer choked a black man, George Floyd, to death. And we see that this is only one of the many instances of something like this happening. In this situation, a white man denied a black man the right to equal protection by law. The right to equality also includes the equality of opportunity. Another example of natural inequality is of differently abled persons. Even today, we see that many schools do not cater to the needs of children with learning disabilities such as dyslexia, audiovisual disability, etc., by perhaps providing the same textbooks in Braille and enabling use of sign language, employing special educators, and many such methods. In a similar manner, a lot of inequalities exist, and a lot of opportunities are denied. Thus, all the examples that I have presented to you today only highlight the relevance and the need for right to equality today, simply because it accounts for all of these inequalities and strives to remove them by means of equality before law, prohibition of discrimination, and equality of opportunity. Members of the House, the right to equality will give way to more inclusivity, allowing all to get the same respect as the other and being privy to the same privileges. Therefore, I firmly believe that these are possible and not farcical. With that, I'm very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Devangi. The judges may kindly note that the speaker exceeded the time limit by 25 seconds. I notice that there are hands which are up. I recognize Abhiram Krishna Shukla at this time.
Thank you for that speech, ma'am. Ma'am, in your speech, you talked about equality before law. Ma'am, but when we talk about seeking justice, it's need to be litigated by a counsel. Now, a well-off person, a person who has resources, a person who is rich, can engage a senior counsel and can engage a counsel who is renowned in that particular field. And on the contrary, if we talk about a poor person, he cannot do so. So on what basis do you classify or do you characterize that this is equality?
The question was addressed to Devangi, who has the right to reply now.
Thank you so much for your question. With the permission of the chairperson, I would like to answer this question. Members of the House, continuously, I have reiterated that the right to equality is the means to achieve this equality. We understand as the opposition that inequality exists, and that is exactly why the right to equality came into being in the first place. And I would again like to point out that right to equality in itself includes equity and not formal equality, as the proposition has been talking about continuously. Therefore, it is by means of this right to equality that equality or equity will be achieved. Thank you.
Thank you, Devangi. There is one more question, and Arnav Agarwal is permitted to ask this question.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your speech. Ma'am, in your argument, you said that the Indian Constitution has apparently skewed the right to equality to include equity. So, ma'am, that has been done because right to equality is a farce and it is not something which can be achieved. Please justify this great concession.
Yes, Devangi.
Members of the House, thank you so much for your question. And with the permission of the chairperson, members of the House, we are continuously seeing how the proposition has failed to understand what the right to equality is in the first place. The right to equality is substantive equality. The right to equality is equity. It is not something else that the side proposition thinks of today. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Devangi, and thank you, boys, for your questions. We now have the opportunity of listening to the third speaker from side proposition, Arnav Agarwal, who will be presenting his arguments on behalf of La Martiniere College.
Right. Am I audible? So I'm audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay.
And
yeah.
You drinking water, okay?
So it is water, be assured. Okay, right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the analogy of the Greek mythological creature Ouroboros, the snake that eats itself, runs perfectly analogous to the side opposition's arguments. After the few points made by the first speaker and the few anecdotes shared by her, and after the very energetic speech made by the second speaker, the only thing which I can interpret out of their case is that they're trying to promote communist ideals in a democracy, which is indeed ironic. A very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed panel of judges. As the third speaker of the side proposition, it was my duty to counter some of the points made by the side proposition. But since they've made none, they've made my job significantly harder. However, whatever remains of their case, be in short, I'll break it down into shambles. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at the very onset of my speech, 3 questions to the side opposition today. How is it possible for the right of equality to be implemented in absolute sense, that is to be implemented throughout the duration of an individual's life? Second question, how is it practically possible to ensure that each and every person gets an opportunity, each and every citizen who lives in a country gets an opportunity and gets equal opportunities? Third question, how is it possible to prevent the creation of an elite class which will inevitably get more opportunities due to its physical advantage over the other people, over the other existing contenders? Now, ladies and gentlemen, moving on to the first question and the first clash for today's debate. Now, ladies and gentlemen, what today the side opposition had to prove to us was that all stakeholders in today's debate, that is the people of a country, will be given equal opportunities throughout the expanse of their lives. That is, they will be given equal opportunities in whatever they do and whatever field they compete in. Now, ladies and gentlemen, understand that the right to equality cannot go on mini hiatuses and then suddenly occur in certain instances and can say, oh, haha, I have been applied, so therefore I have been guaranteed to citizens. So according to the side opposition, what this so effectively characterizes for us is this example. So according to the side opposition, this particular thing would occur that we would not give equitable tuitions and equal opportunities to learn to students, but we would give equal opportunities to students to compete for an exam, and therefore we're guaranteeing the right to equality. That is how flawed their case is. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the right to equality means that equal opportunities have been given in its absolute sense. Equal opportunities have been given through and through, not just to compete in an exam, but also to prepare for the exams. And due to the natural differences between a person, due to the biological differences and physical differences, that is frankly not possible, and therefore the right to equality stands as a farce. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the right to equality is not a one-time deal by the government, that it cannot be guaranteed just one time and ignored for the other. In the first speaker came up here and gave us an example about the Malala Yousafzai getting shot in her head. Now, with this example, they themselves shot themselves in the foot. So understand how, ladies and gentlemen, gender equality has forever been due to natural differences. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, that is the premise of why gender inequality ever existed. So what happened was that due to natural differences being irremovable, the people of a country very conveniently overlooked the fact that they actually have to counter the underlying clause, because obviously it cannot be countered. So they very conveniently circumnavigated around this fact and countered all the other spheres and all the subsidiary problems or issues which arise out of it. And therefore, ladies and gentlemen, the very underlying problem and the root cause of gender inequality, which is biological differences, which is biological inequalities, cannot be countered. Now, let us furthermore establish the point that this notion of gender equality is a hydra. Now, understand, ladies and gentlemen, why. Let me give you a very simple example. In India, women were not allowed to vote at a particular point in time, right? So when they were given the right to vote, another problem rose up. That is the right to be represented in the politics, right? So therefore, this is the hydra nature of the gender inequality notion which persists in our society. That is, if one problem is solved, another will inevitably rise up due to the main cause of the problem being overlooked. Right. So the third speaker and the second speaker and their first speaker all talked about the right to reservation which persists in our democracy. I understand that third speaker very conveniently came up here and said that the right to reservation comes under the purview of the right to equality. The first speaker broke up from this line of argument and said that the right to reservation is somehow related to equity, because the right to reservation is to ensure that everyone is on an equal status and not everyone gets equal opportunities. And the third speaker completely conceded and said, okay, right to equality is a flawed notion, is a farce. So therefore, the government of India has very conveniently skewed it to turn it into the right to equity. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, as my second speaker and as my first speaker have already pointed out to you, that there is a huge difference between equality and equity. And that is what the side opposition completely fails to understand. Along with equality being a farce, and I've come to the realization that another thing is farce, and that is them winning their debate. And also, do you see what I see? Yeah, I definitely see the trophy, and I'm taking it home as well. Thank you so much. Very proud to propose.
That was Arnav Agarwal speaking. Judges will note that he overshot his time limit by 65 seconds, 1 minute and 5 seconds. I now call on call for questions from side opposition asked of Arnav Agarwal at this time. And we do have a hand raised, okay? This is Devangi Dubey. Devangi Dubey will now be recognized.
Thank you for your speech, sir. You have been time and again differentiating between equality and equity. However, sir, do you understand that there is also a difference between equality and the right to equality? So how do you justify that?
Sir, ma'am, sorry. I very explicitly mentioned in my speech about the right to equality and the right to equity, which you've been so conveniently confusing in your part of the debate. Now, understand, ladies and gentlemen, that since this has given me more time to elaborate upon my case, I shall very graciously take that. All right. So what is equity and what is equality? Now understand, ladies and gentlemen, that what we mean by equity is that there is bound to be an elite class of humans in any environment which are bound to rise up and bound to dominate a particular sphere, that they're bound to get more opportunities than the other person, and they're bound to get more opportunities than their competitors. Why is that? Maybe due to physical features, maybe due to social advantages. Therefore, ladies and gentlemen, understand that to sustain a balance between these two spheres of society, there needs to be equity, right? What would equality do? That every citizen between these two classes is given equal opportunities. However, what equity does is empower the lower class to be compared, to be on the same level and the same pedestal as the higher class and the elite minority, which is established in any form of environment and any form of society. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much for that answer. We still have some time. We can take another question at this time. And we have Manu, yes, who will now ask her question.
Thank you for your speech, sir. Throughout your speech, you mentioned that you asked us a question, in fact, that how are we going to assure that the right to equality is guaranteed for a lifetime, right? So now, I would like to remind you that along with rights, we also have fundamental duties. And with fundamental duties comes our duty, wherein if we are in the higher hierarchy of the society, we have to uplift the ones who aren't. So do you not recognize your duties? And also, sir, our third speaker did not speak yet, and you presumably made some points and contradicted your own stance. Thank you.
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me point two things at which the side opposition is horrible at. Firstly, listening. Secondly, English. I'm very sorry for that. Now, ladies and gentlemen, they came up here and said, I think we are ignoring the fundamental duties part of it. Now, understand, ladies and gentlemen, that there is nowhere mentioned that charity is a fundamental duty. Otherwise, everyone would be donating to the beggar which you see on the street. And furthermore, this debate is about equality and how it is a past. It is not about how we're supposed to follow fundamental duties along with equality. And that is why their entire case is flawed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, and also just to clarify, your third speaker questioned us about reservation in the very beginning of this debate. So I think that answers your question as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was Arnav Agarwal, the third speaker from the opposition, Martiniere College, Lucknow. I now call on the third speaker of the opposition, Pavni Diwan, to present her arguments.
Am I audible?
Yes, Pavni, go ahead.
Thank you, sir. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let us summarize the entire argument up to this point in one single sentence. What they have essentially come up here and said is, we appreciate the right to equality, but we do not support it. What we support is equity. They have failed to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that the right to equality does imply equity. Let me explain myself with the help of an example. Let's talk about the rights given to senior citizens in our country, ladies and gentlemen. The basis of this right is natural difference, which cannot be altered by humans. Senior citizens in the country, the government offices or banks, they have separate counters and lines to facilitate them. They are given certain tax concessions. Why? Because of these natural differences. If a young person complains that, oh my God, I'm not being given these differences, this is inequality, that does not make sense because that person does not need it. Equity means giving people what they need according to their requirements, not providing everybody the same things. And that is exactly what our government and what our constitution does. Let's take another example. Poverty line are given subsidies because it is difficult for them to afford something as essential as food items. As millionaires in this country are not given that. Why is that? Again, because of equity. Why? The right of equity which comes under the right to equality. The value of money is quite expensive, but the millionaire does not care for a 100 note, ladies and gentlemen, and that is what our government is doing. They are providing equity under the right to equality, and that is why the right of equality means equity. Secondly, what they have done is they have completely confused the terms different and unequal. Let me explain this to you with the help of an example again. Nature has made us different of different races and ethnicities. That is because we have different skin colors, ladies and gentlemen. That is a natural difference, not an inequality. Inequality is superiority of one and inferiority of the other, whereas difference simply implies distinctions. Nature has made us distinct, made us different. Superiority and inferiority and by and large inequality arises because of constructs made by man, such as colonialism and racism. What they have said is the right to equality is redundant because it can never be implemented. But the fact remains, ladies and gentlemen, it is already being implemented. I'll give you an example. In 2017, the Kochi railway station hired 23 transgenders, ladies and gentlemen. Why is that? Because of their natural inequality. We are facilitating them. We are giving them opportunities to grow and opportunities to provide for themselves and to live a life of dignity because we recognize that there are inequalities in society today. Last, they came up here and they spoke about how caste and gender are all man-made inequalities. Agreed, ladies and gentlemen, but they must acknowledge that they are man-made inequalities and what man can make, man can also deconstruct, ladies and gentlemen. The topic clearly talks about natural inequalities here and man-made inequalities are not our focus. Now, let's talk about the right to equality in detail. We argue that the right to equality should exist and in fact does exist because which is the quality of being fair and impartial. Equality focuses on giving people what they need, rather giving all the people the same thing. Equality can only be implemented, which is what they have done. They have taken equality in the very strict sense today, which is absolutely not what the essence of equality can only be established and provided for when everyone starts at the same starting line. But that is not true in our society today, ladies and gentlemen. In our society, everybody starts at different points in their lifetime, and equity aims that although they might start differently, they may end on the same common finish line by erasing these said inequalities. Disabilities, ladies and gentlemen, they have a biological condition, something they are born with. That is definitely a natural inequality, and we acknowledge that. But there are provisions to facilitate them. There have been developments, there have been reservations. Let's take an example. Braille books are provided to those with a reading and a seeing disability, they're not distributed at random to persons who are fully functional, ladies and gentlemen, and that is what we are implying today. Let's talk about plants and animals, ladies and gentlemen. You might say that right to equality is irrelevant because plants and animals cannot be given equal rights, which is something we to equality applies to humans, but that negating them. Plants have plant rights, animals have animal rights. We give people what they require as per their requirement. Ladies and gentlemen, today as side opposition, we acknowledge that nature has made us unequal. Not always differences among us. Who says persons with disabilities are equal? They are not. They are just, but because of society, because of man-made constructs such as wealth, society, status, symbol, caste, gender, discrepancies, we treat them unequally. But implied that cannot be bridged. We are privileged enough to afford and enjoy our wishes and desire, and we are privileged enough to have the means and opportunities to fulfill our aspirations and desires. So we must assist and help those who are not as privileged as us. People say great power comes great responsibility. We as side opposition today recognize that we have great power, and sometimes we don't even work for this power, ladies and gentlemen. Some of the people have great power just by being born into a family, something that we have no control about. And we argue great power comes responsibility. We need to ensure that these inequalities are bridged today. We acknowledge that most inequalities such as caste and gender are man-made, but natural inequalities such as age and health, even terminally ill people, ladies and gentlemen, we all right to life. But people who are terminally ill might not want their life. Even they have been given an opportunity to die with dignity through euthanasia, which many countries have implemented across the globe, ladies and gentlemen. We are striving towards a society where all can through the right of equality. We aim to bridge these man-made differences and hence establish a society where all are equal. We want to ensure that although there are numerous inequalities currently existing in our society, and we begin at different privileges, end at the same note. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavni. There were a few audio glitches over there, but we were able to get the gist of what was being said. We do have 2 hands raised at this time. And once again, But before that, announcement of time. Pavni exceeded by 2 minutes and 15 seconds. 50. Sorry, 2 minutes and 15 seconds. Right? Questions at this time. Abhiram Krishnan Shukla.
Okay, thank you for that speech, ma'am. Ma'am, very simple question. Ma'am, today you all talked about equity. Ma'am, don't you think we have exceptions to this law because it cannot exist naturally and cannot be implemented alone naturally, and that is why you all are bringing equity into play?
Thank you for the question, sir. I hope I am audible and there are no glitches at this point in time. To answer your question, let's talk about the gender bias existing in society today. I argued, and we all, in fact, as side opposition today, argued that society and this gender bias is because of man-made constructs, which is absolutely true. It is agreed that nature has made us biologically different, but that difference does not imply that we are unequal in any sense. Has been established over the years by institutions such as patriarchy, ladies and gentlemen, and that is what we oppose here today. Why are women provided for? Why are there more provisions for giving them opportunity, giving them work, giving them avenues for growth and development? It's because they are unempowered, ladies and gentlemen. They require empowerment. Men, by virtue of do sometimes and many a times have certain privileges, and we acknowledge that and we aim to bridge that. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Pavni. There is a second question, and there's a hand raised by Arnav Agarwal.
Ma'am, thank you so much for your speech. Ma'am, your first speaker and your second speaker quoted examples like the Malala Yousafzai examples, which are about man-made inequalities. You said in your speech very, very explicitly and with great chutzpah, I must commend that we are not talking about man-made inequalities. That is not our focus. Please justify.
Okay, I will justify my stance at this point in time. Again, I hope I'm audible this time again. Ladies and gentlemen, why we took up the Malala example is to explain to you how establishing and a right to equality is so important because of the present inequalities in society today. What I spoke about inequalities because the question here clearly states that nature has made us unequal, and hence it is justified if we negate the right to equality and consider it as a farce. But ladies and gentlemen, the fact remains that nature has not made us unequal. Most of the inequalities that exist today in our society are man-made. Acknowledge that man has made these inequalities. Man has the ability to deconstruct and negate these inequalities as well. Natural inequalities such as persons with disabilities is something that can be rarely negated, and that's why it needs to be facilitated. However, man-made inequalities can be abolished just the way they were up in the same place, and that is why it does not negate the fact that there are man-made inequalities existing in society today. We need to erase all kind of inequalities, and that is again what we are affirming today. Thank you.
Thank you, Pavni. That was Pavni Diwan. And with that speech, we come to the conclusion of the main arguments presented by both sides for this topic. Nature has made us unequal, so the right to equality is a farce. At this point, we move into the summing up of arguments, and the principal speaker of side opposition will now sum up on behalf of her team. I invite Ananya Agarwal to sum up on behalf of the Martiniere Girls College.
May I begin, sir?
Yes, you are.
Good evening once again, members of the House. To summarize this debate, as lead speaker of side opposition, it is my prerogative and responsibility to highlight before the House how the arguments put forth by side proposition fail to explain their stance. However, my worthy opponents have made this task entirely too difficult because all the arguments put forth by them in fact support side opposition. Members of the House, today they absolutely fail to understand the motion they so vehemently tried to propose and have therefore continuously misconstrued and misquoted our arguments and made personal attacks. The burden of side proposition today, ladies and gentlemen, was not to prove that there is natural inequality. No, members of the House, they started off with the wrong interpretation in the first note. It is a given that nature has made us unequal. They had to prove that despite this, the right of equality is ridiculous. They failed to understand both their burden as well as ours. The first speaker came up here and said that right to equality means giving equal opportunities to everyone despite their differences. We couldn't agree more. Then their second speaker came up here and told us that the LGBTQ are deemed as unnatural in many countries. Exactly, ladies and gentlemen, that is why we have the global movement that is equality for LGBTQ community. We are striving to ensure that they are given equal opportunities, they are given equality. And we have already achieved milestones in this, ladies and gentlemen. Same-sex marriage is legal in numerous countries, and as I'm sure my opponents must be aware of. Then they came up here and tried to argue against the example of Malala Yousafzai. They said that just because some people believe that girls should not be given education because of biological differences, which is obviously quite absurd, it somehow means that the principle of trying to achieve equality when it comes to education for girls is ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, please note, here we are also not talking about whether the right to equality is right or wrong. They have already conceded this part of the motion to us. They said it is right and just. No, we are now asking them, how can they declare that this right to education for girls is ridiculous despite the milestones such as Malala Yousafzai they have already achieved in this end? Ladies and gentlemen, when side proposition comes up here and declares that the right to equality is a farce, they at the same time declare that Black Lives Matter is a farce, feminism is a farce, LGBTQ rights movement is a farce. Everything that we as a society are aiming to achieve is a farce. And therefore, I am very proud to oppose their stance. With this, I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ananya. That was Ananya speaking on behalf of her team and summing up on behalf of the proposition. I now call on Akul Kumar, the principal speaker for side proposition, to sum up on behalf of La Martiniere College.
Good evening once again, ladies and gentlemen. People don't actually want equality, they want fairness. The assumption that a single right to equality is sufficient is a farce. You need rights specific to the people, specific to their unequal status, fair rights, just rights. Idealism based on not fully understanding each situation is not right. Understanding that people are naturally unequal makes it easier to provide them with equal rights. I think I need to clarify again that equity recognizes differences and attempts to counteract unequal individual opportunities, whereas equality recognizes sameness and treats everyone as an equal. Here, I would like to thank Madam Third Speaker for giving examples of how inequality needs different ways of being addressed. Equity gives every individual what they need and require, which is more important than giving people a blanket treatment, which is what right to equality is providing. So the opposition wants to create a world where equality should just exist for the heck of it without having any actual effect. Yes, have same things for everyone, but let's say equality of taxes. Rich people won't have issues with taxes, but the poor will. Equity makes sure it's actually equal. People are naturally unequal in terms of race, color, gender, etc. We are not grading them as superior or inferior. We are saying unequal. We need to embrace that inequality. We need to acknowledge that and give them avenues that are just and fair. Birth is the biggest lottery of life. A person could be born in a slum or in a palace. The accident of birth is the biggest determiner of how the rest of a person's life progresses. There is no such thing as equality in nature. There's only survival of the fittest. The Indian Constitution gives us 6 fundamental rights, right to equality being one of them. But these fundamental rights are not available to large sections of society, and of late they are being denied with renewed vigor. Talk of equality is a farce when millions go to bed hungry, undernourished, when children are denied health facilities. We still have bonded labor and child workers. Let me give you some more examples of how right to equality is a farce in a world that is actually quite unequal. The sporadic demands of a uniform civil code and a muscular assertion of majoritarianism constantly haunt the minority psyche. Is this the right to equality on ground of religion? So dismal is our government education system that a class 6 student lacks the ability of a class 2 student. 27 of every 100 children who join school drop out by the time they reach class 11. Those who pass out of colleges are unemployable. Are we giving equality of opportunity for all citizens in matter relating to employment? The hardest hit here are the physically or differently abled. Of 28 million, not even 0.1% have access to school, and not only 0.01% to higher education. The right to equality addresses some very broad categories and makes broad statements like shall not discriminate. And then there are laws and reservations for certain category of people. The right says equal opportunities for employment. Then there are laws making concessions for some. This is why and where this right becomes a farce. We need to accept the inequalities and give fair, just rights to all as per their needs. With this, I would like to rest my case. Thank you.
In both cases, both for Ananya and Akul, they were within the time limit that was set. I now request the judges to complete the tabulation of results as has been discussed with them privately. It will then be further tabulated and the calculations, etc., made under the personal supervision of the vice principal of the college. All this will be available to the debating secretaries of both schools later. It is at this point that we have the opportunity to listen to two young speakers representing the two schools. I call on the fourth speaker of the proposition, Abhiram Krishnan Shukla, to present arguments from La Martiniere College proposing the motion.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay. A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The topic for today's debate reads that nature has made us unequal, so right to equality is farce. And I stand here firmly proposing the motion. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the topic for today's debate wanted us to debate about right to equality. What they have to be debated upon is equity. Now, perhaps this is because they were busy in scrutinizing our in-house productions. Moving on. Ladies and gentlemen, as long as society has human quality, in its nature, it cannot have equality because equality has a connotation of diversity, simple. Now, we tell them that social inequality cannot be removed because some people have more money, more power, and more resources. They had no counter to that. Now, they talked about equal opportunities. Now, ladies and gentlemen, when a person sits for an examination, now let's take the example of two people who are sitting for an examination, a person who is well off, who has resources and who has money to go to a proper coaching. And on the contrary, there's a person who is not well off and cannot afford that particular guidance. Now, in that case, the opportunities leading up to that examinations are not equal. Thereby their entire case today is illogical. Now, ladies and gentlemen, to conclude today, I would just like to say that today we are not saying that this particular right is good or bad. Today, we are saying that this right is farce. It's absurd because we cannot expect to treat each and every person equally. And ladies and gentlemen, one more thing before I conclude, that today, after listening to side opposition, I'm sure of one thing, that our in-house productions are far better than some farce or absurd constructives. Thank you so much.
Well, that was Abhiram, and as the last speaker, and we will listen to what she has to say with very great interest. We have Ashika Manu, who will be presenting arguments against the motion.
Good evening. My name is Ashika and I'm the fourth speaker of the side opposition. Now today, firstly, I'd like to clarify two very important points that my first, second, third speaker have been trying to emphasize, is that the essence of right to equality is substantive equality or equity in the first place. I quote, essence to right of equality is substantive equality or equity in the first place. And there's a difference between equity and equality. And there is a difference between asking for equality, the right to equality, and equality in itself. Now, I'd like to emphasize on some other points too, that we all are kids of nature. And when nature is giving something to her kids, she does not let her biases come into it. For example, we got the same time as the proposition, but see, the utilization of the time has been done entirely in a different way. And in their entire speech, they mentioned that it is a lie, ridiculous lie, and the social structure is failing. And what I feel is that they fail to understand that they are the society. They constitute it. So when they talk about it failing, they talk about themselves failing as a whole. And I thought that maybe at some point of time they would have the scope of improvement, but I absolutely lost that point when when the speaker comes up and does personal attacks and condescending remarks are made. I'd like to say that the opposition has done a wonderful job in laying out its point, and I'm very proud that we were opposing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aishika. Aishika was the sports speaker from La Martiniere Girls College. At this time, I will request our technical hands to come back to shared screens where we will be able to see each other once again with the tension of that debate now off our shoulders. Once again, a warm welcome to the judges. And it would be nice at this time, in a far more informal setting, to hear any remarks that our judges would like to make at this time. I understand that they have already uploaded their result sheets, so that will be taken care of. I can see two of our judges on the screen, and there is the third as well. So may I call upon Mrs. Raha to just give random thoughts. This is not a speech, because we've heard enough of that, and that poor Malala has been beaten to death after having been shot in Pakistan, all right? But it would be nice, ma'am, to hear your comments upon how our boys and girls have fared.
Thank you, sir. Let me tell you, this was a very pleasant evening. Shut up as we are in our own houses, most of the times we want to climb walls at the moment. It has made us irascible, irritable, annoyed. I can go on with a host of adjectives. So it's so nice to see all of you young people so balanced, so rational, and speaking so nicely. That shows that, you know, the lockdown or these months of staying within the four walls of your room or your house has not really affected your intellectual capabilities. That's a fantastic plus point. I admired your poise, admired the manner in which you assembled your points. Both teams, you know, there was just a hair's breadth of difference between all of you. And I admired the, you know, the respect that you gave each other. We have a very bad example amongst our leaders, all right? We are mudslinging with a vengeance all around us. So it's very nice to see young people realizing that, you know, that courtesy is a very important aspect of any debate. I also admired, and I must commend your teachers, sitting so far away in Calcutta. Sometimes you wonder, or Kolkata as it is now, you wonder what the rest of the country is like. You wonder what students are like elsewhere. It's so nice to know that all of you are the same, whether you're north, south, east, or west, and you're thinking along the same lines. Very well spoken, very well, you know, presented. I liked your presentation, your delivery, because most of us nowadays take delivery very casually. And it's done. And thank you, Mr. McFarlane, for having me here today.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I hope to make your acquaintance the next time I am in Calcutta. I love your city very, very much, and we'll be sure to call on you. May I now ask Mrs. Oja to say hello. This is not a speech, okay? I promise you, this is not a speech. If you just want to say hello, even that will be enough, but we'd like to hear an opinion on the way in which our boys and girls have performed.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say, I'd like to compliment whoever came up with the topic for the debate. It was a very interesting topic and very well debated by both teams. I found it very interesting. And as Mrs. Raha has said, I really appreciated the courtesy with which was extended to each other by the speakers. And not only that, their arguments, their content was very good. Their delivery, I found a trifle fast and excited, but I dare say that is what happens when you're anxious to get all your points across. Sometimes if it could be in a more measured tone, you might make more emphasis, but I think they had quite a lot that they wanted to say and wanted to say it as quickly as possible. But that was very well done. And yes, so, and also I'd like to compliment your technical team for having made the scoring sheet so easy for us to follow. It was very difficult indeed to judge. It's just really a point here or there, but each of the speakers was very, very good. And I can see a great future as orators and as good public speakers as they grow more senior. I assume they're in standard 11 or 12 now. And I look forward to seeing some of you in parliament or as leaders of the country, perhaps, speaking well and with such courtesy and respect for others. So well done and congratulations, Mr. McFarland and all your team for putting up this very, very successful online inter-school debate.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It will be a great pleasure to hear Reverend Peters speak at this time. Once again, Cecil, this is not a speech, okay? Just to share with the boys and girls thoughts that you had during the course of today's debate.
Good evening, sir. I was just reminded of our days when we were in college and we used to have similar debates, and you were our judge. So it is quite something to sit in and listen to young boys and girls make their point with a lot of passion. And in order to make a debate realistic, you have to have a passion. And that was what I saw in all our speakers. And as our judges rightly said, that the environment in which the debate is being conducted was excellent. And we would really like to see the same speakers in the future when they go on to do various things in life. They will continue to keep this, the ethics behind debate that is going on. So I had a great experience, and yeah, great topic to listen to and enjoy. Yeah, so it was a great time. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much, Reverend Peters, for your remarks. We've had a very pleasant evening, as Mrs. Raha said. It's so nice to know that intellectually young people are still stimulated and that they are still full of passion, full of verve, as we have seen on screen today. I feel a little odd being on screen because I can't really look into your eyes. And as a teacher, unless you make visual contact with somebody, you really wonder whether you are communicating well enough. But this is one of the limitations of our technology, but God bless the technology. And thank God we have the technology as well at least we can keep in touch. Thank you, Mrs. Ojha, for also pointing out the work which has been put in by the technical team. I depend upon them very, very heavily, and they all have different abilities and different talents. Some of them are terrific with hardware. Some of them know how to blend softwares. Some of them are into so much of graphic work. And I am also glad that we already had a full team functioning much before the pandemic struck us. We've only recognized the very great worth of each of the members of our technical team through this situation. I am grateful to them. We listened very carefully to the debate, and I am not going to wax eloquent on my point of view, etc., except to make 3 points in my summing up. The first, that the word unequal, we have to go home thinking about, are we talking about a difference? Are we talking about a 40-60 difference? Are we talking about some people who are 50-50? Are we talking about the difference as in pink and green? What is the baseline for this equality that we speak about? When we speak about rights, human beings are not born the same. They are born different. But once we are born into a society, and the rights that we talk about are indeed the construct of a society. When we are born, there is the possibility that we may live. There is the possibility that we may not survive. As one of the speakers said, it was more a survival of the fittest. But being born into a caring society ensures that there are certain rights which are granted to all. An area which was not touched upon sufficiently is the word farce. If we check up the meaning of the word farce, it is different to comedy. For comedy always ends with us learning something, for comedy teaching us something. But a farce is buffoonery. A farce is that which is ludicrous. A farce is that which has the element of the improbable in it. So when we are talking about equality and rights, do we really see this as just an attempt at buffoonery, just slapstick comedy, nothing real in it at all, complete bunkum to be completely rejected? The argument will continue. But on the basis of the arguments which have been presented this evening, the judges are pleased to declare that the motion this evening has been defeated. Therefore, side opposition has won this debate. Congratulations, La Martiniere Girls College. And this is where we miss the physical element, because by now the hall would have been torn down with screaming. The Martin Memorial Trophy presented to La Martiniere Girls College. The motion is defeated. The runner-up team, La Martiniere College. The winner, La Martiniere Girls College. As chairperson, I am proud to congratulate the winners. As principal of La Martiniere College, I am proud to congratulate La Martiniere Girls College for their outstanding win. The principal speaker of the proposition, who also leads the runners-up team, is Atul Kumar, who is being recognized for his contribution. The The second speaker is Aditya Vora, and these certificates presented virtually over here will be presented in person when the opportunity arises. The third speaker is Arnav Agarwal, and the fourth speaker is Abhiram Krishnan Shukla. All four of them very worthy for the runner-up position in this debate. But of course, plaudits to Martiniere Girls College, the winning team for this evening's debate, where the principal speaker, Ananya Agarwal, has led her team to a well-deserved victory. She was supported by Devangi Dubey, who is the second speaker, Pavani Devan, the third speaker, and Ashika Manu, who is the fourth speaker. Congratulations to all of them. And now we are waiting. We are waiting for that one special award which separates the good from the best. And the judges are happy to be able to declare that the Best Speaker Award for this evening's debate is presented to Ananya Agarwal, Martiniere Girls College. We must quickly put the spotlight on this young lady to catch the initial reactions of Ananya at this time. That is not Ananya, that is Miss Manu, that is not Ananya, all right, who is up over there, okay? We do have a bit of a glitch now and then. And there is Ananya, okay? Ananya, I am clapping for you. I don't know if you can see me do that, as are in fact the others. Let's get rid of this wretched screen, and there we see Ananya over there as well. She can unmute herself, okay? It is our tradition always to raise cheers. It will sound a little false and fake when you are at home, but I am sure you would like to say a word to your opposing team at this time. Ananya, the principal speaker, Martiniere Girls College, as well as the best speaker in this evening's debate. Over to you, Ananya.
Thank you so much, sir. First of all, I would like to begin by saying how wonderfully organized Martin Memorial was and what a pleasure it has been to participate in it. I'd like to thank the judges for considering my team to be worthy enough to lift the trophy of Martin Memorial. And thank you for awarding me the best speaker. And I would like to thank the opposing team for their wonderful arguments. And yes, it was a pleasure to debate with you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ananya Agarwal, which gives an opportunity to Akul on behalf of the team from the Martiniere College to not only respond, but also to congratulate the winning team. Akul Kumar, over to you.
Thank you, sir. We would like to, from the Martiniere College side, we would like to present our congratulations to the Martiniere Girls College. It was a very interesting debate, and I'm sure all of us had a very great time debating with this team. And we would like to thank all the judges for adjudicating this debate. And yeah, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Akul. Okay. And of course, let me say that Akul has now made the acquaintance of 4 people whom he didn't know at all this afternoon, or so he said, all right? But it is now official. Akul now knows 4 more new girls. Thank you very much to the principal, Martiniere Girls College, Lucknow, who has been watching this program as well, Mrs. Ashrita Das, for being confident enough to know that our boys and girls would be able to meet virtually and carry out this debate as they would do in a physical setting, either in Spence Hall or in the new fantastic auditorium that you have, the Farida Abraham Auditorium in the girls' campus. I thank the judges. I thank them most sincerely for the wonderful work which they have put in. The Martin Memorial Trophy is indeed presented to La Martiniere Girls College, and we conclude this evening's program by a joint tradition, which is to sing the college song, this time virtually.